Hi, I'm Tracy
And I'm Lonnie.
with One Blessed Step, and today we're going to be talking about 10 reasons why we sold our retirement home and bought a van.
Which is where we're sitting right now.
Exactly. Before we get started, we just want to remind you this is not investment advice. If you're taking investment advice from YouTubers, we suggest you find someone more professional.
Do better.
Do better. Do better. So let me give you a little bit of background. 20 years ago, Lonnie and I created a plan that would set us up for retirement. We planned to retire in a really small town called Pine, Arizona, and we loved it there. It was just this really amazing small town.
It's a really cool small town.
Yeah.
Was. I guess that's not.
It's still
pretty cool. It's pretty
amazing.
Yeah.
But it's just different. Things have changed. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But we bought a little cabin there, and we sometimes rented it out. We vacationed there a lot. We would go at least probably once a month or twice a month. We would go there with the kids. And this is when the kids were really, really little. And we were renting it out right when Airbnb started. So we were original Airbnbers. I know. Eventually we did sell that cabin and we bought another cabin that was it actually was more of a home. The first one was more of a cabin because it was like wood.
It was
wood.
Red,
It had
it was really nice.
Shake wool.
Yeah, we had to get
roofing.
the roofing. Yeah, we had to get rid of that. It wasn't insurable.
No, it wasn't insurable. We ended up getting like a metal roof on that. We put solar on it.
Yep.
We were really planning on living in that one. And then we ended up selling it because we found a better home. Right on the border of the National Forest. It was our dream home.
This was what we always wanted.
Yes.
Back the forest.
Back the forest, and this was going to be our retirement home.
Yep.
We were so excited about it, and we just really, really loved it. And we just knew this would be the place where we would settle down.
Yeah. It was a great little home.
Exactly. Yeah. And we owned that one for many, many years. Yeah. And in 2020, we actually ended up selling our main home in the city because we were making plans to move to Pine. We were going to just permanently move there. Our kids were older. Our plan at the time was to rent an apartment while our youngest finished high school. And then when he flew the nest, we would be empty nesters.
Yep.
And then we would move to Pine and execute this amazing retirement plan.
Yeah, all done. Set in stone.
Exactly. Except something happened around 2020. And things went really awry for us.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of making the move to Pine, we ended up repurchasing a home in the city. And we ended up selling our retirement home instead.
Yes.
And here are the reasons why we did that.
So number one is, what would life look like? We're reading all day. We weren't ready just to settle down. It's just like we kind of tried to take a picture of ourselves in that cabin. It was just like, wow, I don't know that's exactly what we viewed our retirement. We wanted to really do more things. Yeah,
we thought about we were going to finally, move to Pine, and then we would spend all day just sitting on the porch reading.
Yeah.
And we were like, we're not even 70 yet.
No.
We're 50.
Yeah.
I feel like this
is a little early.
Yeah. I feel like it's about 2 decades early for that.
So it's just that really started just sitting in our crawl, going man, wait a second here. We don't want to be just chilling the rest of our retirement there.
Yeah, and even then we're not retired.
No.
Just to be clear.
No, yeah.
We work mostly remote. So we were thinking, we'd go up there, we'd work remote, and then in the afternoons, what would we do? And we were like, okay, well, I'll craft.
Yep.
You're like, I'll do some projects. So I'll find some things to do.
Build stuff,
right? Woodcraft and all that fun stuff. And then we sit on the porch and read, and that, we really played that out for a while in our heads, and it got to be I started feeling really old. Not my age.
Aged in place.
Yeah. And
wow.
So we were just maybe in 1 to 2 decades in the future, that's something that we would want to do. But in this small town, there's really not a ton of things to do. No. About 20 minutes away, there's a town called Payson. They got a movie theater.
Right.
They got couple ice cream places. But again, it wasn't just something that we were ready to do.
No.
We needed a little more adventure first before we settled down. Now, it doesn't mean we have to sell our home for that.
No.
But there are other reasons. Stay tuned. We've got to tell you a little bit more about that. So it just wasn't the time.
No. It wasn't.
So the second reason why we sold our home was as we would move up to Pine, that would cause a reduction in our income by 10%. This is really huge. Do you want to talk a little bit more?
Yeah. So in my job, you have a locality pay as a portion of your payment and of your salary. And so depending on where you're at, they're trying to base it on, and it makes sense, on cost of living. So where we lived compared to out in Pine, the cost of living was drastically reduced. And so in place, same job, just living in a different spot, we would see a 10% reduction.
Yeah.
And it was a lot.
But the cost of living was factored into your employer's number.
Right.
But like really it's not 10% cheaper to live there, because even property taxes are higher in Pine than they were where we were.
It's a flawed system for sure. So because it doesn't, I mean, there's so many things, so like you're saying, there's so many things associated. I think the biggest thing when I read about it was like transportation. I was like, well, transportation, we're remote working or teleworking, and transportation wasn't a big cost to us anyways. So it was going to hit us bad as far as income goes. Mm-hmm. So the cost of living, we wouldn't see the savings difference between going to this more remote area to the smaller town. We just wouldn't see it.
Right. So, but they were saying it's 10% cheaper to live there.
Yeah.
And we really didn't find that to be the case, because even, with the Walmart nearby, it wasn't 10% cheaper to live there.
No.
In fact, like I would say the fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that were actually more expensive out there than they were in the city. So it didn't seem like to take a reduction in that income and not see an actual 10% reduction in the true cost of living. Yeah. It just didn't make sense for us.
Yeah. That one hurt.
Yep.
So number 3, we were evacuated for a fire in 2021. It's called the Backbone Fire. And it was coming from the west towards our town and a small town just north of us called Strawberry. And we were put under orders and we had to get out of there. And that was kind of surreal. I mean, you're living in a forest, so you think about, forest fires and all that aspect. But until you are actually evacuated, it really kind of made you reevaluate how much you want to live in a forest.
Yeah, we've been living there for well over a decade, almost 15 to 16 years, and had never been evacuated before. We had seen some serious fires, like we saw, fire going up the hill across the street. So we had seen fires. We just hadn't experienced an evacuation of a fire. And prior to that, our evacuation, a few years before that, we had family that was evacuated from the fire near Alpine. What was that called? Do you recall? The Chetasky fire.
The Wallow Fire.
The Wallow Fire.
That was a big one.
And when we went to visit them later, we just saw like charred trees. Yeah. Right. It was just kind of disappointing. You live and one of the reasons why you love living near the forest is because you have the trees.
Right.
Well, when the trees get burned up, it's really, number one, it's hard to resell. Yep. And number two, you lose all the reason, like a good portion of the reason why you chose that location to begin with. And so it just got us thinking, like, what happens, if Pine like did get destroyed with a fire? Right. Like, would we still want to live there? Yeah. And we started thinking, not really. Yeah. Like, that's the reason why we want to live there, is the beautiful location, the beautiful trees, the nice shade. Yeah. But without that, it's not necessarily a place that we really want to retire. No. But again, I mean, it may never burn down. Right. So it didn't burn down in 2021, which was amazing. But we did get up there and pack everything into our travel trailer at the time, and had all of as many of our belongings that we cared about as possible down to Phoenix. Yep. And then we actually ended up not losing the house and not losing the forest, which was amazing. Right. Thank you, firefighters. Yep. We love you. But we did end up, thinking that through. Like, is this really where we want to retire, with the ability, being 70 or 80, having to pack up everything and leave? Yeah. I'm not sure that's for us.
No, and kind of as you're seeing with, we're 3 in, all of these are factors that probably on their own probably weren't the singular reason why, but you're starting to feel how we felt. These things start adding up.
Yes.
And it was like, wow. And we're only at 3.
Yeah. So let's talk about number 4.
Yeah, number 4.
So number 4, we've always had problems with in Pine, and that was water issues. We have had water issues since the beginning, since forever.
Yeah.
We've had problems with the water in Pine. And not that the water's not any good, it just, what happens is like the system that's set up on a bunch of wells that were individually drilled and then all combined into like a system, like a private system.
It was a hodgepodge of a bunch of small water companies and systems that was all bought and just kind of left. And they never really improved it. And so they were always fixing stuff. So they were always fixing valves that were leaking. And so all of a sudden our water would go off.
Yes. And so what would happen, like the biggest thing that we found initially is because the small area that we wanted to live in was more of a vacation town, what would happen is everyone from Phoenix would come up to Pine, they'd use up the water, and then the water table would go down, then they'd go home for the weekend, and then the residents, whoever left behind, would deal with whatever water was left, and then that would refill, and then they would come up over the weekends and they'd draw the water back down.
Right.
And so the water was not reliable. And after we bought our first cabin, the Pine Strawberry Water Improvement District came in and they raised our prices at least double, which we were happy to pay. Initially, I think our water bill was like $16 a month. It was so cheap. And I think it got up to like $40 a month.
Right.
Because they were going to make all these improvements. And I think they were trying to make improvements.
I think they were trying.
They just didn't succeed.
I think they had some internal issues too.
They had some internal issues. There's probably some scandals and things going on.
Embezzlement stuff. Or
Who
whatever.
knows? Right.
But the money did not go fully towards improving the system.
No,
in the end.
And the system is still broken.
Yeah.
And so we were struggling with, coming up for the weekend or coming up for a week and having the water shut down for days or shut down for a few hours, and then it would come on, the water would be muddy because they'd have done something. So it was just kind of like not reliable, and we were concerned. And, newspaper articles came out about the town losing water. I think the town went for some funding. I don't know if they ever got the funding, but they had like Mark Kelly come and really try to get us some funding for the water.
And I think they're having well issues too. I think some more, they rely on a bunch of these wells, and I think just over time, well after well after well was just like drying up or not functioning right.
And recently they bought a house with a well on it.
Yep.
And then decided to use that well, and now the residents of that community are in a lawsuit. Yeah. So it's just the water situation is a hot mess, and we need water wherever we decide to retire, and we're not confident in the water there.
Yeah. So number 5 is healthcare. It's hard in a small town. I mean, you think about as a retirement place, you need to be able to go, something happens, you need to get to a hospital or an ER. Well, that's 15 miles down the road. And they're running you down to a bigger, smaller town called Payson.
Yes.
And their hospital is okay, but still there's a lot of specialist stuff that also they would end up taking you even further down to Phoenix or Scottsdale.
Yeah. We were finding that our parents, our parents live out, the majority of our parents live in smaller towns out in the outskirts. Many of them don't live in the city. And they have a very, very difficult time with healthcare.
Yeah.
So they're finding that, if they need something major has to happen, then they get flown down to Scottsdale or they get flown down to Globe or wherever they are.
And appointments, like even specialist appointments too. Now they're driving like an hour there, hour back just to go see. And it's like, wow, I mean, that's not really what you want to do. If ideally you'd like not to, have 2 hours of driving when you're in your 70s to go see a specialist.
Yeah, that's a lot of driving, especially in the hills.
Yeah.
If you're driving from, let's say Pine all the way down to Scottsdale, there's quite a few windy roads there. It's not the easiest roads to drive for like a 70 or 80-year-old person. No. So it just got really concerning for us, and we decided that healthcare would be an issue.
Yeah.
And so as we get older and think about retirement, we want to live in an area where it's closer to a hospital and closer to a reputable hospital and closer to specialists. Number 6, the small town that we loved. Oh my goodness, when we bought,
we could walk to it.
I
We could walk and
know.
do all this stuff.
We bought in like 2000, was it 2005 when we first bought?
Yeah.
And like you could walk to places. Nobody ever came to Pine in
No,
2005.
nobody.
You knew the librarian,
Yeah.
you know, she wasn't nice, but you knew the librarian. You know, had a little small fair that you could easily drive to or park at. It wasn't very crowded, and really over the last few years it's gotten really crowded. Now our the restaurants have improved.
Oh, the restaurant
Like,
scene totally
amazing.
has like went through the roof there.
Yeah,
Much
5
better.
stars, 4 stars, great places to eat. But we don't go out to eat a lot, so it's not like like a thing for us. But just so many more people, especially over the last couple years, we've just seen a dramatic increase in the amount of visitors, not just coming on the weekends, but like full time, legit living there.
Well, I think after the 2020 Big C, I think everyone started looking at going out into the wilderness more. And this is a great place. It's a good stopover before you go camping out on the rim, or you just go camping out. It's just a nice little place to stop.
Right.
And man, it is just not let down. It's just as busy, if not more.
Yeah, parking is awful on the weekends, and really got more dramatic there. Like, in the Facebook communities and the next door communities, things just started to get really dramatic.
Yeah.
Whereas before, nobody cared about it. Like, it was just like, I'm going to go fishing. Like, I'm not going to, I'm just going to hang out and just enjoy. But like, it got really dramatic, and things just started changing. It wasn't the small town that we grew to love. It's still small, but it's small with like a bonus amount of drama,
right,
and a bonus amount of, lack of parking.
Right. And kind of looking at it as a retirement place, it's like, wow, you almost like our parents, they have to they just kind of sit in during the weekends. The weekends get so busy. They don't want to go out. They don't want to go out. They don't want to deal with it. And I'm like, wow, I don't want to be like trapped in my house during retirement.
Yeah.
So
just because there's too many people on the road. And you have to remember, these small towns roads, they're not like your city roads. So it's not like you can you feel comfortable. Like, if there's a lot of traffic and you're going down a really windy road and people are being, not respectful of each other, you could get into an accident. And there's more accidents now than there ever have been in the small town that we just loved. Oh. So it just changed. It changed.
So number 7, the property just wasn't what we thought it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's with all this extra use, back to the forest is awesome. Yes. It's awesome. And it's beautiful. But there was the primary access to the forest was behind us.
Exactly.
And so everyone was zooming up and down that road at all times of night. And man, we just got dusted. Exactly. All the time. The dogs were dusty. Everything was we tracked in dust. Just everything had a coat of dust on it.
Yeah, and there wasn't as much rain as there used to be to kind of keep that dust down. Yeah. So every time we would come up to visit, we'd have to sweep out all the dust.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it was just excessively dusty, and it wasn't what we really thought it would be.
Yeah. I think you just kind of think you're up in the woods. There's going to be enough moisture that, wouldn't be that dusty. There'd be occasional, but you're right. We weren't getting rain. We weren't getting our normal monsoon stuff.
We haven't gotten normal monsoon in Arizona in a decade.
Yeah. And so it's just getting more and more dusty.
Yeah.
So, and that was just not appealing at all.
Yeah. And that takes us to number 8. That is the fact that we can actually visit the area for free whenever we want to. And what's nice is that we have family up there, and if they ever decide to sell, we can actually buy them out if we want to buy into that area again. But right now, we can visit for free. Yeah. So why pay property tax? Why pay for everything when we literally have family members that are saying, come visit us. You don't visit us enough. And we're constantly getting nagged about it, which is fine. We love it. Yep. We love it. But we're not an imposition when we go.
Nope.
They love to have us there. So, why not go for free?
Why not? So number 9 is, we also wanted to kind of free up funds for travel. As we kind of looked at what we wanted to do and what we looked at retirement, as we talked about before, we're like, wow, that's sitting there. It really isn't the retirement we want to do. what do we really do want to do? And we want to travel, and we want to see things. And if we sold it, we would free up funds to be able to do things more around traveling and just seeing stuff.
Being
stuff.
more flexible, not being so tied up. I mean, if we sold the house, then we would free up the cash, right? Because that house was actually paid off.
Right.
So we worked really, when we invest, we diversify our investments. Obviously, you have your 401ks and things like that, but we're not just all in on 401ks. We're like, okay, we like the 401k, but what else do we need to think about in retirement? And a home was something that we had really thought about early and had invested in early and had just paid off. So we could free up that money, which actually at the time would make more money than like just in a savings account than actually renting it out. A lot of people say, oh, you should just rent it out. But you have to remember when you're renting things out that there's still a lot of maintenance. There's a lot of housekeeping and cleaning and things that have to happen. You still have property taxes.
Insurance.
You have insurance. You have a lot of expenses. And they don't always go up with inflation. Your housing prices don't always go up. I mean, look at the Great Recession. Like we went from a house that was worth $400,000 to $175,000 in the span of a couple years. Yeah. So we couldn't be sure that house would retain its value over the long run. And we could free up this money and actually make more money just putting that in a savings account and thinking and deciding about what we were going to do with that money in the space where we are today. So it just made a lot of sense to just not rent it out and to just sell it while the market was pretty high. And it actually has gone up higher since we sold it. But we're not people that are like optimizing. No. We're just people that are like, does it seem like a fair price? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a part of that goes to that was just thinking about just the costs associated with just having it. Like not even renting it, but just the costs to insure it. You mentioned like the water company had just a flat fee now. All these things were like, wow, yeah, we own the house. Maybe it'd go up, but it's certainly not going to cover those costs.
No. Because I think it was just a minimum of like $100 a month just for utilities. And then about $200 a month for property taxes. Right. And then, like you said, insurance.
Yep. And then there's maintenance associated with it. You're going to have to make sure that, that roof was going to eventually have to be replaced.
The roof was going to be needed to replace. I wanted to redo the whole kitchen. Right. We didn't have a second bathroom. We were thinking about adding a second bathroom. Right. Yeah, there were all these things that we still wanted to do that we just were like, nah, now's a good time to sell. Like, seems like the market's pretty high. And if we sold it, we could do things that we want to do with that money while we're still young. Yeah. Number 10. And we just changed. Yeah. We thought retirement would look like 20 years ago is not what we think retirement looks like today. No. And I think what we think retirement looks like today is not going to be what it looks like 10 or 20 years ago. No. So we want to remain flexible. We want to think about, okay, we still want to plan for retirement. We're not planning for retirement. We are planning for retirement. We'll tell you more about that in other videos. Yeah. But for now, we're thinking, okay, we don't need that retirement house. Let's go take some of that money, invest it in other areas, which we have. We've taken that money. We've invested in other real estate. Yep. And we ended up buying a van. Yes. So we did buy a van for cheap. We always do things like, let's go used, right? And that's a whole other story. Oh, yep. Another video there. We sold this home. We bought a busted up van. Yep. We spent a ton of money trying to get it to do what we needed to do. We did all the things, like all the right things where you go get a mechanic to look at it and all those things, but it didn't quite work out for us. It didn't. So we decided that, time is short. Yep. We've got a great opportunity now where both of us are working remotely. Yep. We're gonna, I wouldn't say invest. No. We're gonna invest in ourselves. Yes. And so we decided to purchase a brand new 2024 Integra Ethos 22. Yes. Which we love.
And we're sitting in right now.
Yes. And we're actually just enjoying life and, doing the things that we need to do, but a little more remotely at the same time. So we're kind of combining all the things that we wanted to do in retirement while we're currently working. We're like living retirement while working, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And more focus on like a shorter term window, like next 5 years. Yeah. Certainly thinking about in general the like 10, 20 years, but not setting it in stone like we did when we were younger.
Right. And we're ready. Like we plan for retirement. So we're ready for retirement. If we wanted to retire today, we totally could.
Yep.
There's a whole nother video on why we're not doing that. The short answer to that is we really love what we do. Yeah. So why retire?
Why?
And we're just going to kind of live retirement now as best we can while we're still working. Yeah. And so in doing that, we purchased this new van and we're having a lot of fun with it. So in our next video or in a future video, we're going to show you the inside of this van and give you a little bit of a tour and talk a little bit about, why we chose this versus why we didn't choose something else. So we hope that you stick with us and we hope you like and subscribe, and we will see you on our next video. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Goodbye.